Alrighty, we thank you. Thanks for doing the slides.
No
Good
problem.
evening, everybody. Welcome. We are so excited. This is our first presentation for the Rubinstein-Taybi Syndrome Virtual Speaker Series. We're going to be having presentations every other month from now until May. So tonight's topic, we're going to have Celia Schlomer present, and she's going to be talking about navigating RTS together with your child's voice and your family's vision. So this evening, we will have a short welcome and introduction. Celia's going to give her presentation, and then we'll take some questions and answers. Just to clarify, you may ask questions during the presentation in the chat, and we can, see if they're relevant at that time and present them in the moment, if that's okay with you, Celia.
Great.
And then if you guys could stay on for the last couple minutes to give us an evaluation, and then we'll be able to let you know when our upcoming presentations will be. So just a little bit about us. Um, Celia and I work for the University of Cincinnati Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, and our team includes Ilka Riddle, our director. Celia is our family support coordinator, and I am the program coordinator for the RTS Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana team. And I'll let Celia take it away.
All right. Thanks, you guys. This is such a privilege to be a part of. Every time I get to work with the RTS families, either directly or in settings like this, it really just brings me back to my roots of some of the favorite things I enjoy doing. The idea of doing navigating RTS together with your child's voice and your family's vision. When we talked a lot about kind of where I could add to this speaker series and how I might have something to offer in my role of family support, we talked about a lot of different things. But I think that in the last 3 to 5 years, the people with disabilities, individuals with disabilities, children with disabilities, adolescents, and adults, making sure their voice is in a room in a way that it really is honored and heard by everybody in the room has really kind of become my true north. It's become my true north in a lot of different ways for a lot of different reasons, which I'll share with you as we move through this. But I really want you to kind of tune into those words, voice and vision. I want to encourage you to let you know that I'm a person who loves cameras on. So I'm going to thank Vanessa and Peggy. I am not condemning anyone who doesn't have their cameras on. I am not that person, but it just so helps me to be able to see a face and feel like I'm talking to other people and to know that whatever I'm saying is resonating. So please make a face if what I say doesn't make sense. And please make a happy face if what I say makes sense. Because it really, that feedback means a lot to me as I move through my presentation. I want to share first and foremost the basics. Lauren said that I'm a family support coordinator at the UCED at the University of Cincinnati Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. UCED's an amazing little organization that when I was what we affectionately always say about ourselves, just a mom, I didn't know what a UCED was and I didn't know what a UCED did. But they really are this place that taps into interdisciplinary training, really helping families' voice come forward in different settings where people support them. And it really just, I don't know how I got through life as a mom of a kiddo with a disability without knowing about UCED. And so it's something that I feel like is a real privilege to be a part of. I'm coming up upon my 10-year anniversary. I started in December of 2015. That's 10, right? And so I'm really excited to be here again. I won't belittle that point, but I want to make sure that you guys know that I always know it's a privilege to talk to families and to share in this way. And I come to this room as a mom. I come to this room not only as a mom of a now young adult, actually she's bordering on just plain old adult, she'll be 32, with a disability, but I also come to this room as a sibling, as an aunt, as a sister-in-law, of individuals with developmental disabilities. And so it's a real passion place for me. And I'm excited to be able to share with you in this way. So the first thing I'm going to do, one of the things that I have the privilege of being a part of is the Charting Life course framework and tools. And this will come into what we're talking about because I do believe that is the easiest way to tap into your vision or your voice. So if you look at the chat, Lauren has put in the chat two different what we call one-page descriptions. And those tools are tools that I'm going to talk about tonight, and I'm going to really get to the crux of our primary focus of bringing vision and voice into any room, school especially, but this will work for you in a doctor's appointment, in a hospital visit. And it really is, I almost liken it to magic. It's a lovely little thing that just changes how we listen and changes how we talk. So I'm going to show you how first, before I even tell you what it is or how to do it. So I want you to take a minute, and I've told you a couple of things about me. If you're brave enough and willing to hang out with me, the chat, something that you remember that I told you about me, and just type it into the chat. I shared a few facts about me. I shared some facts about where I work, and it would be helpful if you would just throw a couple of those in the chat. Okay. That you wished you had known about what a USED was. Great. That you worked for 10 years at the USED. Okay. So a couple of things. So I'm going to tell you a few more things about me, but I'm going to use you're heavily connected to people with disabilities. Yes, this is true. I'm going to share a few more things about me, but I'm going to do it through the use of what's called a person-centered tool. And that's the whole idea of voice and vision, bringing that person to the center of the room every time we're having a discussion. So take a peek now. This is what's called a one-page person-centered description. It starts with what people like and admire about me. For those of you who may not have cameras on and be able to see because you're multitasking, it says I don't know a stranger. It says I'm a dedicated hard worker. I'm a out-of-the-box thinker and a great brainstormer. Follow through is a little slower, but I am an excellent brainstormer. I like to have fun. I'm a devoted family member, and I'm a helper by nature. I can't help but try to help, right? So for what's important to me, for others to know I'm safe, open, and respectful to anyone, that I love to partner and collaborate, that I like to make a difference, and I love to make change. I always want to build community and stay connected. I want to feel grounded in the work that I do, and I want to grow honest and helpful feedback. How can you best support me? Communicate openly. Let me know if something's not working for you so I can adjust what I do. Assume that anything I do is with positive intention, but make sure you offer honest feedback so I can grow. Make time to wonder with me. I love thinking about what's possible. And unconventional options, my even more favorite spot. Encourage my effort to prioritize a work-life balance and check in with me. A quick, how's it going? Helps me feel supported. It doesn't take much. Okay. So you can see what people heard the first round. But how many people, and I'm going to play games here. This is what I do when I present all of her. How many people use the hand emoji, put it in the chat. I don't care, but this is interactive as much as it can be. Humor me. How many people here feel like they know a little bit more about me? I see. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. How many people know that I might not be someone they want to hang out with regularly? And you don't have to raise your hand for that one. How many people go, oh, I might want to go out and have coffee with her, right? Oh, we have a lot of things in common. That person-centered piece is what creates connection. And connection is what gets work done. In a classroom, in a school, during an IEP meeting, when we find common ground, when we understand each other, when we know what motivates each other, that's when we can really get work done. And we can respect, but yet maybe blissfully and lightly disagree, or suggest another option. But all of those things happen when we're able to understand each other better. And that's really what being person-centered does. In this context of the work that I do for a good percentage of my job in bringing in person-centered tools through the lens of something called Charting a Life course, we talk a lot about, we never, ever talk about a person with a disability, a child with a disability, a family of a child with a disability, without looking at that person within the context of their family. Whether that child is 8 months old, 12 years old, or 45 years old. Because we all know how important family is to us. I'm of an age that my mother has already passed. There are plenty of times I look up and go, oh gosh, I wish I could call my mom, right? So we are all people within context of family. We encourage, when we talk about this work in every room, including in many schools, you can't lose sight of that person within the context of their family. And schools know this. There is so much built for families in schools where they are doing family support along with, whether your child has a disability or not. We have after school activities so that it's easy for me to have things happen after school, but there's someplace close where I already am going regularly. We have in-school supports for counseling. We have in-school supports for free lunch. It runs the gamut. So schools have to be family and person-centered. So what I want to do is encourage you to use this powerful idea of being person-centered in a room where your child really is the center of the conversation. But there are a lot of things during your support conversations with school, whether your child gets additional support through formalized paperwork that is legal, like an IEP in the United States, or if they get just 504 type support, or maybe they're managing their classwork on their own, but they're just part of a school community. Any of those places where we're having conversations, we can use these thoughts and these tools, whether we do it formally in the written form that I showed you, or we can do it more informally by just thinking as we're having a conversation with a teacher and we're in disagreement, that we look up and go, wow, I really admire that she's standing her ground on this one. I really admire that she's giving me a chance to talk. I really appreciate that she's taken the time in the hallway when she was on her way to another meeting, even though we're maybe not feeling complete connection with her. Maybe we're stopping and going, I wonder what's really important to her in this place where we're disagreeing. I wonder how I can support her meeting that need, but yet hearing what I have to say, right? So it's a way and a framework that you can continue to move through thinking, and we'll go deeper with that. So we're in this space and we're trying to elevate your child's voice. And careful, because I said your child's voice, not yours. Mom and dad's voice, the family voice is very important. We never not look at it within context of family, but we really want to get to the crux of who your child is and what they want and need. Because how many people in this room, and you can wave at the camera, you can throw up an emoji, you can say me in the chat. How many people in this room have been in a room where they're trying to accomplish something where it does not align with what your child wants? And how successful are you when it is not what they want, right? And so we really want to know what drives them, what motivates them, what brings them to the table in a way that they're able to participate, right? And we're doing that juggle with all our kids, but we're doing it in a very different way with our kids with disability. And so I say that as we look at this, we really want to elevate their voice. That's our why. Why are we doing this? We want to elevate our voice. Why is that so important? But if we want to elevate their voice, we want to really have conversations about who they are. Because when people in the room recognize who they are going to get what they need, and we are going to get farther with our goals and our wants. Also, if they know who they are, they're going to feel more confident and they're going to feel more competent in a room where we're asking things that are really hard from them. So helping them be seen and having conversations and really getting to the crux in a conversation with them. And I say conversation as a broad picture term. I know a lot of our kids may not have full on conversations. I always, I'll get asked all the time when I'm in this work, what about my child? She's non-speaking, or he's non-speaking, or doesn't give me complete thoughts. And what I say is, you may not say exact words about what they want, but there's that mom gut and that experience that tells you what they don't want. And there's a direct correlation. We can work from there, and I'll give you other ideas, but don't shut down and believe that this isn't for you if your child is non-speaking, because everybody has a voice and we have to tap into those ways of bringing it in. The other thing is, we're going to be having conversations that really then recognize their value and their contribution to a community, to a school community, to a classroom community. When we really talk about and get person-centered about what's important to them and how you can best support them, teacher, how you can best support them, lunchroom person, how you can best support them, mom and dad, we're going to be having conversations that recognize their value and what they bring to a room. Because your child contributes and brings something to that classroom every day when they're there. Conversations about what they want. And as I said before, when we don't hit what they want on, like the nail on the head, we're going to know. We're going to get pushback. And that's any child. They're always trying to negotiate their wants and their needs. It's human nature. So when we have conversations about what they want, we can elevate their voice. And again, I'll repeat, they feel seen, they feel like they are competent and they are confident, and it helps them move into that place of self-determination. We'll go a little deeper there in a second. We're going to have conversations about what they need to be successful. And when that's driven by your child's voice in the ways they can communicate that, it's going to hit it in a different way, and it's going to be more successful. And we have to take time to figure that out, whether we're doing that in a formal process of really looking at a behavior plan in school, or whether we're just trying to make sure that we're keeping them in line and going the same direction as the rest of the class. We have to understand what they need for success. And that takes time and effort to get to know them. And when we can take time and understand, even if you look at it from the context of staying in line, and it could be an ongoing battle, you're hearing from the teacher every week why we're not staying in line, that they need to stay in line and they need to stay with the class, and we're really having a hard time. If we really can get to what they need to be successful at that, and we can peel that onion back and have a real conversation about it and make it more so we know what's important to them in that moment that might be causing them to go out of line or not be in line, what traits and strengths they have that are going to make them successful. Maybe they are great at knowing exactly where the art room is, and they're getting really excited to get to the art room, so they're beelining ahead of the line. Maybe them being at the front of the line is going to give them enough context, value, and understanding that they need to be able to show everybody where they're going, that changes the context of the difficulty of being in line. But all those things, as we peel back that onion, help us understand what they need for success. And those are the conversations that we have in school all the time. And when we go back to three things, what are their strengths? What do we like and admire? What do they bring to the room and to the space? Why do we care whether they make it to art, right? Because they bring something and they change that room. And then what's important to them in that space, and how can we best support them? And when those needs are met, we get better and stronger cooperation, and they get a better experience that allows them to learn and be able to be more successful and connected in school. The most important thing to remember as we do person-centered work, and I tapped into it a little bit earlier, when we do this one-page person-centered description, when we do vision planning, when we pull up a voice, we have to make sure that conversation, that information is done either by the person with the disability or the person that we're focusing on, or with them, and most importantly, with them. And it's really fun when I get to work with a mom or a dad or a grandmother for that matter, or a grandfather, a family member, or a teacher, where we get to work with a student to do some of these, answer some of these questions, work with some of these tools, especially this one-page person-centered description. Because often they don't believe or they can't visualize how their voice is going to come in, how they're going to tell you what people like and admire about them, right? And we have to recognize that sometimes they don't know because we haven't had a lot of opportunities because they're younger and a lot of their peers don't have that same opportunity to know. Or it could be because we just haven't heard it, right? When we do this work, often with teens with disabilities, the one thing they say is nobody's ever asked me that before. And when you think about it, if nobody's asked you a particular question before you do, you pause and you wonder, gosh, I've never thought about that. What do people like and admire about me? And so often what we're doing with families and with teachers is taking time to have an opportunity to ask that question of others or to collect that information in different ways. It's beautiful when a school team comes together and before they write the IEP for the next year, goes around and talks to other people within the building and within that team to say, what do you really like and admire about this student? And when you get to go back and give that information to the student, it's really powerful. So I think that recognizing this is work we do together, and it's work that could be very powerful is something that I always want to make sure people know. We do have tools, and I'll show them to you. If you look at the ones that are in the chat, and I'm hoping everybody has access to that, you'll see that Lauren put both the family one-pager and the individual one-pager. I would love it if people are there and they're able. I see a couple of you driving and stuff. Don't do that, but go ahead and open those and take a look at them because we changed the wording. And before we leave tonight, I'll give you one that even just says the student, so you could share it with school teams and have them answer similar questions. But it's real. It changes the voice. You know, what do people like and admire in my family member? So that we know when you write that down, you get to write whatever you want. You're not putting words in their mouth, right? You're putting down, you should be able to download those, Sarah. It may be where you are at this moment. We can email them afterwards too, but you should be able to just save them and then open them. It's kind of an opposite order. Your instinct is to open and then save, but you save and then open. And you can open from the chat again. I apologize. So really thinking about it from that standpoint is really powerful. And as I said, often when we get to older kids, they'll say, nobody's ever asked me this before. And they're tickled to tell you what people like and admire. And even our kids who we're supporting who may not feel as solid in the questions, how we work and how we talk to them. When someone says, we break it down to, and I work with adults too, an I am statement, and we'll get into that. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I am strong. I am smart. I am powerful. I am a good dancer, whatever it is. But pulling it back and practicing that, because as we go through adult life and into adult life, we should be able to tell ourselves those attributes, those strengths that we have. And doing that and starting that practice earlier, again, will fall into that self-determination and confidence and competence building. So I've shared a little bit about this tool. I'm hoping you're opening it up and looking at it. It really, the one pager is a powerful snapshot, right? It creates partnerships with school teams. You guys know more about me, and likely, at least if I ran into you, you might say that was that lady who told us way more about herself than we needed to know. But that idea that it creates that partnership, it creates that connection. And I've had families have a conversation with, someone outside of family, and they're saying, they'll look up and say, so how does that support what's really important to him? When we look at this, he said, this is important and this is important. So how is this decision that we're all wondering about supporting what he says is important to him? How is it designed to support him in the way that he's communicated is the best way to do that, right? And so it, as I said before, it elevates your child's voice. It captures who your child is. When I think of the emails that I wrote to try to get ahead of the train, I'll call it, at school, and let that new teacher know what might happen, what could happen, what she might expect, what I hope she knows. And, it would be this just ongoing email about everything I thought she needed to know, right? It becomes quite a litany by the time they get to be in 11th or 12th grade. To have this one page each year that travels with and goes into, and it can go to the after school soccer program. You might tweak it. We really encourage writing them for that space. But in school, what is it that is your child's strengths that you want played to? What is it that's really important to them in the building? And those, we'll go into it. I'm getting ahead of myself again. But just knowing how it captured your child, it gives insight. It's a nice way in a neutral space to communicate insight as to what works best for your child. And when we're having difficult conversations, to make it provide insight in this very neutral space is very, very powerful. The possibilities, and remember how I said on my one page, I love people who will wonder with me and think about all the possibilities. And the possibilities are endless, and I'll share stories along the way. But this is the biggest possibility. And that is growing self-determination. That idea that I am self-motivated and I don't just do something because it upsets someone else. And I can tell you from my experience of supporting families in school across the last probably close to 20 years, that idea of transitioning into adulthood and having a place where I do it because I want to, or instead of doing it because somebody else is going to be disappointed or upset with me, because that is anxiety inducing, right? When I'm only doing it to avoid the thing I'm afraid of. But when I can learn to do something because it makes me happy, it makes me feel connected, it makes me feel confident or competent, it changes how I enter a room, how I participate, how I present if I get to participate in a friend group, when I do that, or when I participate in a work setting. I do it differently when I have self-determination. And self-determination is something that schools are striving for. As they talk about the growth of a student, they want to see them building self-determination skills, because we know that success and contentment come with self-determination. So when you looking at tools that are person-centered, like this simple one-pager, you're going to learn to know what's important to you. If you start asking your second grader, what's important to you this year in school, and you help them really start communicating what that is, and that's going to be an art depending on your child's willingness to talk to you first and foremost. And I mean, talk broadly, communicate with you what they want, along with how often that's ever been a conversation before. But I'm always willing to talk to folks and help them kind of brainstorm through that. But them understanding that they get to identify what's important to them is really powerful. And the more opportunities they have to do that, and when you ask what's important, what do you want? When we go to the zoo as a family, when my kids were younger, everybody chose 3 animals. I had 4 kids. Everybody chose 3 animals, including my husband and I, because we figured we could get through that in an entire day at the zoo. And those were the animals we saw first because they were important to everyone. So we started making that connection. When you voice up and when we ask, we will follow through on what's important to you. And that way, I understand the power in that. We had a student recently where the mom, he had voiced, he's been working with the framework for a little while, and he uses an AAC device, but he had communicated a concern about a decision for his school team for the next year. At the end of the year, teacher casually had asked him, "What are you worried about?" And he said, "Oh, I'm very worried," and expressed what was going on. with his talker. And they immediately, we were so tickled, the team responded very quickly. They built a plan. It was perfect. Summer happens, August, as you can all imagine, at least here in the States, school and the start of school was a little wonky. There were a lot of changes happening in the education system in the United States, and there were a lot of changes happening in buildings. And their plan got kind of blown apart by somebody who wasn't part of that conversation of what was important to him, and decisions were made. And they came back as a family, and mom very astutely said, you can't ask him what's important to him and then not have it happen with no conversation or explanation with him. Remember, with or by, not for. So with him to say, oh, this is what happened. This is what we think will fix it. We'd like to try this. What do you think? Because then I recognize that what's important to me is important to you, right? So that idea, what does that help him do? That helps him see that there's value in him. There's value in his word. There's value in his concerns, right? And then we can plan and set goals based on that value, based on that knowledge of what's important. So it can help you set goals and action that fit the plan, as the team did after they had that conversation. Self-determination skills help you, one of the steps towards it is knowing yourself. One of the steps towards self-determination is knowing your value. One of the steps towards self-determination is able to set goals and follow through on them. And there's other tools from the one page that can help you even go further with that piece. And that taking risks and accessing support. So how can I best support you to do this thing called school, right? And then following through on that and helping me gain the confidence that that's something that I can count on. And then lastly, that experience outcomes and learn from them. Experience that sometimes grownups don't come through with what they said they were, but I can ask to have a conversation. And so again, that self-determination piece can happen over and over again. And remember, in this place, we've only asked the child 3 questions, or the family 3 questions. What do they like and admire about you? What's important to you? And how can we best support you? And wouldn't it be really powerful if the parents asked the teacher the same thing? And now we're working together and putting everyone at the center as we do the work we do. If I remember this is really important to the teacher, I might communicate with the teacher in a different way when I'm struggling or when I think there's a problem. So keeping that in mind, again, that person-centered piece really can be powerful. And when your kids have self-determination skills, you are going to see a growth in what they do and how they do it across time. And it is not lost on me as a mom of a child with a disability, as a sister of a sibling with very significant disability. It takes our kids longer, right? But starting with these simple concepts very early. You are going on a family vacation. I know you are really good at being in your car seat. You are so good at holding mommy's hand when we get out of the rest stop. You are so awesome at helping your brother stay entertained when we're bored because we've been in the car too long. I know it's important to you that we have your blanket and that we get wherever we're going in time to watch ABC show, right? And so mom and dad are going to make sure that we do this for you in this way, and this for you in this way, and prepping it in that way. And you've just walked through those 3 questions. So again, it can be used in so many different ways. I want to take a hot break, and I want to hear from some of you who are there and willing to either throw in the chat what ideas you have, what struck you. Again, because I love to wonder with people, what are you thinking? And let's just take a brief moment to tap into some of those conversations. I see Sarah and Kayla both put stuff in there. Kayla, front loading with my son has helped a lot. And that doesn't mean plans aren't going to change, right? But it does help them know what to expect. And as you keep front loading those pieces, they see that you're willing to have the conversation afterwards when it doesn't go the way as it was planned. And again, Sarah, so you've done a one page or a one page of sorts for your teachers. So would either Kayla or Sarah like to unmute and just share a little bit? I don't know if you're in a position to do that. Okay, that's okay if you can't. But I think as we go through this work, as we go through this tool, we can recognize the power behind it and the power behind getting person-centered. Is there anybody here that's like, I'm really having a hard time listening to this because it just doesn't feel like it's going to fit for mine? You know, what we say all the time is, this is really great. I agree with everything, but not for my child. It just won't work for my child. Is there anybody feeling that way right now? Let's see. Quite the opposite. Okay, great, Belinda. I can't join, but mine was all about Allison Page. Daughter is 21 years old, just graduated, and she has more self-determination. Yeah, that's exactly what, it's amazing to me what happens. I'm nervous that it might be ignored, just like a birth plan. And that's valid, Vanessa. I think that's, several ways to do something with that. I often, and again, I'm going to say no matter what age, I don't care if they're in second or third grade. I don't care, if your child is nervous and it's asking too much, because there's lots of ways to work around that. But starting any meeting that's going to talk about your child with them, giving everybody in the room a one page. Very different when it comes directly from them. If your child is a writer and can script things out, their handwriting versus mom's changes how it's received. Having the parent one and the child one, very different when we give them that way and they see the other piece of it or the other side of it. So I think the more you can do to make it evident that it's the child's voice. And often what I do is encourage parents, when they if they do a physical paper tool and they hand it over to someone, this is, I'm going to look for a name. Vanessa, I don't know your child's name. This is Vanessa's one page. Okay. And you're handing it to the teacher. Or the team. We'd like to know how you can help, because there's that whole box of how can you best support me? I'd like to know how you can help. And sit quietly and wait for them to tell you what they can do. I think really young without communication system makes it tough. It absolutely does. And we've been brainstorming with families about how to do that. We've talked a lot about the vocabulary. I want, I need, I don't want. I am helpful. I am smart. And using that as a way to communicate and encouraging and giving opportunities to generalize those types of statements so it becomes part of my vocabulary. I might not be able to do a whole one page coming out of the room, but having an option of a picture exchange system that includes some of this phrasing, it's important to me that right? And they have opportunities to utilize that. And we can simplify it into plainer language, but really giving opportunities. So a 2.5-year-old, and again, folks that don't necessarily use language to communicate, if you're really feeling like you don't even know how to tap into it yet, what you can do is have 3 or 4 people in 3 or 4 settings. Oh, I love this. I love that. I am statements. You're doing it. But 3 or 4 folks that know them. Maybe it's a teacher, a parent, and a neighbor who all fill out a one page that doesn't say people like and admire about me. It says people like and admire about the student, or people like and admire about my family member. And then you look at them together and we go for the common ground. They all said that she's this or she's that, or that this is really important, or she responds best to this support. And we start there. So you may not have a one page that looks like mine that's got 15 things into how best support, because I've got some 60+ years that's helped me realize what supports I need. If I had done this at 20, I would have said, I got this. I got no problem. And everybody else would have said, yeah, no, let's work on this box. So given the opportunity to talk about, given the opportunity to identify it is really powerful. And that vision planning, that place of placing a vision in your child's head with something like Kayla put in there, that mantra that I'm smart, I'm kind, I'm handsome, giving them that language. I want what everyone else wants. I want to learn. I want to read. I want to, and again, giving them the power of those words over and over again is going to put its footprint on your child's vision for what they want. And that's how we raise our kids, and we learn along the way. So I hope this conversation gives you the idea, or at least helps me tap into Karen's question and that idea. And Karen, I'm happy to meet with you a little bit more, or give you some videos that you can watch. And we're starting to develop PECS images and some different ideas with some of the families who have AAC users. Brianna said, Sawyer is in his first year. You are kidding me. Sawyer's in his first, we happen to know Brianna because she's in our local group, the first year of high school. And we had a transition IEP meeting to bring middle school and high school together. And they made a social story of pictures of the new school and the teacher and the aides. That was helpful, but I want to incorporate this one pager so they can learn him better. And you can do it one, and I love this idea, but think of all those places that you love to be, right? Your one pager for some place you love to be is going to look very different than the one pager for a place that you don't like being at all. So your one pager for gym class may look very different than your one pager for math, right? And so, yeah, absolutely. And you can make them fun, and you can have them pick pictures of what they like, but make it an engaging process. And things important too can be school things, but they also can be animals. And let me show you. My next step is to share some examples with you guys. And so I want to kind of walk you through some of these and tell you some stories behind them and the impact that they had. There we go. Okay. So these are a couple, and these are as creative. Some people feel very comfortable with getting more creative. So I know you can't see the lettering, but I'm going to help you. And I always say it's not so important what was said exactly, but it's just the idea of knowing how they did it. So this is Ashton, and Ashton is a student here in the Cincinnati area. And so you can see he likes celebrating. He is all about having a good party. And it's the way he shows his affection. So he gets excited for you. He enjoys FCC, which is our local soccer team, playing soccer, bowling, swinging, watching movies, basketball, etc. He also likes watching storms. So think about that. Activities you enjoy. How do we make connections, meet new people? We find people that like the same things we do. When our kids, or kids with disabilities broadly, often like things that they think you want them to like, or that they're currently doing, and don't genuinely have an opportunity to say, I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't like that, they aren't able to find those places of commonality and shared interest. So helping them really get to what they really enjoy can be very powerful in helping them make connections in adulthood, because then they're able to talk to others who like what they like and make a different connection. What doesn't work for me? Thinking that you're disappointed. Looks like motivation, but it really isn't, right? Punishment, sitting by myself, yelling, authoritative talk, or getting mad. So think about that, how it might hit with a school team if and when they have something where they're disappointed in what he's done or hasn't done, right? So directly talking about that and saying that's not going to have the result that you want. So let's talk about other ways to do it. Sorry, I didn't mean to blow out on that. What I like to eat, and you can talk about favorite eating. My niece only eats white ice cream. And she's 27 years old. And I can tell you There have been family parties that I forgot white ice cream. And she looks at me like I have 5 heads. She's like, I've been in this family for 27 years. And can you not remember I only eat white ice cream for dessert? And so, again, honoring and paying attention to what they say and want is important too. How I learn to trust you and what works for me, right? The expression on your face is super important. And Ashton too is a limited language user. He communicates in lots of different ways. He has multiple ways that he will share what he wants. But he's going to look at your face and then your voice. And what a powerful thing for teachers when they're trying to motivate or trying not to unmotivate, to check their face before they get started, if they want to have progress. So hold on, move over to the other one. This one is another one of my favorites. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Whoop. Now that was a total mess. What did I do there? Go back. Okay. All right. So this is LJ. And LJ's mom was transitioning from services from preschool and early intervention, that earlier to 3-year-old, into school age services here in the US. And so she was very worried about moving from that very protected preschool environment into a more school-based environment and didn't want things to get lost. So she talked about his favorite things. She talked about a few cool things about him. She talks about what helps. And it might be something as simple as wearing their glasses. And that's important. If I'm not participating, it could simply be because I'm not as engaged because I'm not seeing things, right? So important people, because those can be motivating. Give me time to answer. And then she did another one for medical because he had some high medical needs at school and she was very worried about that. So again, it doesn't have to all be on one page. And the nurse and others might get a different one page than what the classroom teacher gets. But the nice thing about this is think about when a substitute teacher comes in, someone who doesn't know them well, and doesn't have time to read the entire IEP. And, you might put on there, it's really important to me that I get all my services in each week. And you could list those out because sometimes the substitute teacher will go, I didn't know he was supposed to go to speech, or I didn't know he was supposed to go to whatever. So how you utilize this, depending on your personal situations, can be really tweaked to be personal. This next one, Paul. And Paul's a little guy, but what people love about me, I'm great at giving hugs. I'm very good at numbers. I'm very good at puzzles. So these are all I am statements. I don't know Paul's parents, so I don't know the story behind this one in terms of how it was created. My belief would be that you would put on here, and again, giving it power, not diluting it. Who helped put this together? Was it a teacher and a neighbor and maybe a swim teacher who's had great success? And say this was formulated by and for. And so it shows how much effort went into making sure we hit all the important things. It gives it credibility, right? And again, gets into things. And depending on the space this is used, words are still hard for me. So please pay attention to my body language, right? Eating is hard for me. I may need extra time and food put directly into my hand. And I've seen the food thing go both ways, in a sense of a family member was like, don't push food on him. LJ's mom was like, it's okay if he doesn't eat his lunch. He'll eat his lunch when he gets home. He was still in half-day kindergarten. She's like, don't fight that battle at school. I want him to love school. But there's other parents who are like, the feeding piece needs to happen, right? And so theirs might give the opposite story. So again, and this next one I love because it was very thoughtful and very detailed, and there's no way not to know this young lady. I have a great laugh. I love to go on walks and swim. I can be very affectionate. I'm pretty proficient using my AAC, but I might need to be prompted to use it. We call my AAC my talker, right? Giving them the language that's powerful. I love my family and they're important to me. And that's important whether I'm at school or not, right? And teachers use family. They'll look at you and if this isn't going to happen, we're going to have to call mom. That's what happened in my house for me. But really understanding that piece, and all of us who work at the USET who are parents, I've always gotten that call where somebody needs to help them calm down. And that applies to my kids with disability and my typical children. But, that's kind of part of the different roles we have. But when they understand that need and how it works, understanding things where first then boards, token economies. What I always say about the how to best support me box is that idea that it should paint a picture of what it looks like, how I would do it. The important to box should give me context and value statements. Right? The idea that it supports a value system of my family, it gives me prestige, things like my phone is very important to me. And so things like that make me feel like I'm part of the in crowd or that I have value. All those pieces are kind of what goes into important to versus how to best support me. But in that best support me, make sure it really tells them I want time with my friends. That's important too. I need time with my friends. I want to go to soccer on Tuesdays. If I miss it, I get really upset. That's how to best support me. Make sure I get to soccer. If all else fails, I don't care if I skipped, I got sent home from school or I couldn't go to school that day. I still want to go to soccer and I'm going to be upset. Then we do that front loading. If I can't go to soccer because I'm sick, we start talking about the fact that we're not going to go to soccer, but that the coach is going to do this, or we're going to talk about this, or we're going to call Johnny and find out what happened, whatever it is. And we're doing that front loading ahead of time. Okay. This is Trey, and Trey, whoops. Trey used his for work and how to communicate at work because Trey's work colleagues didn't understand that he was autistic, nor did they understand what it meant and how they would talk to him more differently. And so I love when you get into best support, he was like, I'm very literal. When you speak to me, don't use sayings like hit the road and things like that and workers had actually said that to him. They were like, I told him to hit the road and he won't leave me alone. Well, he has no idea what hit the road means. So again, it was a way to kind of help them really understand how to see where his autism impacts things. This one was done by a young lady who she uses an AAC device. She's a limited language user. Her voice depends on her regulation system. So sometimes she's able to speak, and other times if she's dysregulated, she can't communicate. And she's an adult. And so she does art and paints pictures of her Charting a Life course tools. And so you'll see things like, so in her photo, she's painted a picture of herself. I'm sorry, her writing it's not a reverse picture. I keep telling her and trying to encourage her to create a font for her handwriting because I just think it's really fun to use. But she's a 40-year-old artist and a disability artist, but she goes in and was talking a lot about she's really good with data, right? She's very self-determined. She does a lot of work around supporting people with disabilities and their health. What's important to her is to have choices, give it to her in a simple format of this, that kind of things. How to best support me is, ask questions, give me time, include me, work with me, communicate. There's a water bottle over here, reminding her to drink water. And I learned that reminding her to drink water because she reminded me once. I was like, I have a terrible headache as we were having a meeting. And she stopped. It was a group meeting. There were probably 20 of us in there. And she typed to me in the full group chat, Celia, have you had water today? I was like, oh, thank you. So again, giving her value where she could contribute in a way where she was caring for someone else. And that happens when we have self-determination. when I don't feel I have something to contribute, I'm not going to try to help others. So letting them recognize and see those places and spaces is really powerful. And being person-centered and using tools like the one page can really help. So your first big decision is going to be thinking about where or why, and usually I say both, you'd utilize a one page. So a couple people have put in the chat, oh, I think I'll use it here, or I could use it here, or I've already used it here. So you could use it when you're introducing your child in a new school or a new setting. You can use it to help with staff in school who do not come into regular direct contact with the student and regularly know and understand them. And I've got a great story with this. There's a family that was being supported by our parent training and information center in Ohio. And the student communicated through behavior often through big behavior. And they were trying to figure out a way when he was in a building, was having a communication barrier, that he would be able to, that other staff who didn't see him regularly wouldn't respond to him in a way that was going to agitate or dysregulate him more, right? And so they kept trying to figure out a way to get his IEP or his behavior plan or all these things so that people could have access. And it was making the family uncomfortable. They talked a lot about HIPAA and FERPA and not wanting everybody to know all that information because sometimes it makes us have preconceived ideas of what to expect or makes us uncomfortable about them before we've met them. And they found a piece of technology that was a watch that had a QR code on it. It looked like a watch. It was a band and it has a QR code on it. They use them a lot for allergies and things like that. And they're like, well, we could use that. And we could just put the behavior plan on that. And so people could scan the QR code and put the behavior plan on that. And we're like, oh, that's a cool idea. Except for now, some kid with a phone that's sitting next to him in biology can scan and see his behavior plan. And we don't want that. So what they decided was that it would go to the one page. And then what was even better was they had him go around and show people, once he had it with his QR code, to go up and show it to people and let them scan it. The kids thought it was cool. The lunchroom lady thought it was cool. The crossing guard thought it was cool because everybody's going, wow, that's right. And they'd get that one page of information. How many people got to, just in the practicing of use, and they taught him, I need help. I need help. And showing him the QR code. And it's still a process. It's still in motion. But again, a great way to help people who don't come in contact with them regularly, right? When I'm joining an extracurricular activity, somebody else already talked about that transition. Brianna talked about that transition to high school. So transition to classrooms or to buildings. Guidance counselors love this. Typical kids and kids with disabilities can utilize it. So anytime we can get it engaged in everybody in the room and not just the child with a disability, even better. When developing parent input or student strengths for the IEP that we use in the United States, a great way to do it also. So any other planning documents to be able to have, and I still think, I don't care, 2, 3, making a little iPhone recording of the child saying, I am, it's important to me that, and you can best support me by 3 sentences, playing it at an IEP meeting or a student-led or a conference meeting, having them come in and present it. The sooner we can start that and I can start talking about my disability and understanding it. One of the things people like and admire about me is I have RTS, and that makes me rare. Things like this, right? That we can always have positive images about all the things about us. Encouraging growth skills for student participation in that type of an environment, or evaluation meetings where they ask for parent input or different things we should be thinking about. I'm watching my time. Let's see. Did I duplicate that slide? Oh, I'm going to go back to this. So again, recognizing that piece of them being different. So in the chat, you saw both. That was my image change. This is the individual one, and put a photo there. I want to go back to mine. I'll do it in a second. And then additionally, the one for family. And then I will put one before I finish. I I will include one for educators that just simply says, what do people like and admire about this student, right? So again, that person in the center of the family and those I am statements. So again, I want to play with you, and I really, really hope people will humor me. We've only got like 20 minutes left, and so I'm really hoping that you guys will rally up and play along. We're not going to talk about your kid here for a second. I'm going to flip the scenario. I want you to come up with 3 statements. I want you to think about work, your job, whether your job's being a parent, whether you have a job outside of the home. I want you to really think about your job. And I want you to come up with 3 statements about what people like and admire about you in your job or in your skills to do whatever job you have. I want you to write them down. I would love if somebody would throw them in the chat. But 3 I am statements, 3 statements that really talk about what people like and admire about you as a mom, as a spouse, as a partner, as a coworker. Really come up with 3 statements that you feel confident about what people like and admire about you in that job. And if a couple of you are brave enough or kind enough, I should say, to throw it into the chat, that would be helpful. I promise I won't call you out. I just need to see them to kind of keep talking. It helps me talk. I'm going to give you a minute for that. But I am. Who are you? And what do you bring to the table at work? Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Kim. Proactive and always willing to jump in. Proactive. Okay, so I need you to come work next to me. I always feel like I'm running on the treadmill. Try to stay ahead of it, but I'm always kind of right on the edge of not quite being proactive. Always smiling and a good listener. So who wouldn't want to work with Sarah? I want to help. Kim and you and I can hang out together. That's very cool. I always want to help. And egg. I'm organized, and you're my new idol because I can't say I'm not organized, but my organization is not always understood by others. I'm willing to help problem solve tough situations. So look at this is awesome. All right. So we've got the 3 I am statements. Now I want you to start thinking about your personal strengths, things people enjoy and appreciate about you. Keep thinking. You're thinking, so to recognize this, and when you're talking to your child, these are things you're good at. These are things that make you feel proud, things that people see and like about you. Strengths are highlighted, and they'll help you make progress, right? So just recognizing what those strengths are and different ways to talk about them. What helps you do better? What inside of you helps you do better? I'm willing to, okay, so, and as you look at that, then you're going to put this in you. And so we've got a document that I will send to you at the end of this, and it helps you talk to your child about, it's guidance to help you talk to your child about that box. And sometimes kids don't want to see the paper. It looks like homework and they're going to shut down. So do this however you want. And you may start collecting it, so what are you today? Are you strong? Are you happy? Are you sad? What are you today? And it might be a regular question. What's important to you today? Just getting them to know these are things we want to think about and know. And every once in a while, you're going to get a gem that's like, what? One of my favorite stories is one of the county boards here. We have a county board system that by each county in our state is who provides services, the disability services. And there was a superintendent of one of those boards, the head guy. And the first time he ever did a one-pager with his son, and I think his son was in about 8th grade. What's important to me is that you don't put salt and pepper on my food. The kid was 13. He's like, I've been putting salt and pepper on his food his entire life. And he goes, and he will still tell that story as one of the most profound things that ever happened to him because his son never had an opportunity to tell him. And it seems really simple, but can you imagine your whole life having your parents do something where they are changing your food in a way that you can't stand every single day? So again, just giving them a voice. Nobody's ever asked me that before is what I always hear. Hold on. So what's important to you? We're going back to you again, okay? I want you to think about this for you. What motivates you? What's that thing that you talk about the most, right? Maybe it's what you talk to your boss about the most. Maybe it's what you talk about to your colleague the most. But in that kind of what you do for a living, what is that thing at work that really makes you happy and motivates you, right? That's how you tap into what's important. What are those things that you are very protective of and you absolutely try to make time for it, right? So one of the things important to me was work-life balance, right? So what is it? I want you to think of 2 or 3 things, okay? What are the things that if they're not there, you're really uncomfortable, mad, or sad, right? So again, thinking hard about it, about what's important to you. And again, this guidance document will help you ask those questions, think about those questions. It can be a game. It could be a writing prompt at school. It could be almost, if they have to do journals and they aren't given writing prompts, have them each day say what someone likes about them, what's important to them that day, and how someone can help them is what we talk about as far as the plain language around how can someone best support you. Can we make it easier, but better, work better, not harder? Encouragement, positivity, and empathy. Wow. Great. I want to work beside you guys. Not that I don't have that where I am, because we do. We have a great work team. But again, and I don't know that I'm very good at working better, not harder. So I might be calling Karen. And then how to best support me. How can others make, so how can people support you? How can they make your experience at work easier? What supports could improve your progress in that role you play? How can others help you be your best self? So think about that for a minute. And of course, that guidance sheet has that. I want you guys to stop for a hot second. So you were in your head, you were writing your one page, right? What if I looked at you and said, at the end of this email or at the end of this Zoom, you have to email that to your boss? How does that sit? What would it feel like to have your boss know what's important to you, what people like and admire about you, and how to best support you? It's a lot. Empowering. I love that, Belinda. That means you have a good relationship with your boss. There are some people that were like, there's no way, because the stuff I thought about, I would never tell my boss, right? And so think about that in that space of empowerment. But that's exactly it. You're empowering your student to have a voice. It's not always easy, right? It's not going to be easy every time to really bring that voice to the room. And that's when I go back to, this is what's important to us. This is what he wants in terms of support. This is what we're hoping for as a family. How can you help? There's not a yes or a no to how can you help. There's not, we don't do that, we don't do that, we don't do that. I can do this, I can do this. That I'm not sure it's going to work in my classroom. See? So again, how can you help? Not will you help, but how can you? And that question, in a lot of ways, is powerful in those conversations. Because again, we want to get to a place where your child is seen, their voice is heard, and they begin to implement your family vision for your child in the activities and in the goals that they have set for your child for that year and across time. So once you play with this tool a little bit and you start to build skills, how do you bring it into real life conversations? In those conversations, whether they are, and how we do this with a child that doesn't use language necessarily will vary. But the point being, you start with that question in the box. What do people like about you? What is really good about you? What makes your, what helps you? You know, what about you helps you? I'm not coming up with the words right now, but what do people like and admire about you? And then you go on to say, as they begin to say, and so for example, I had done this with one of our families with RTS down here, and they were like, he started talking about what he liked, right? So what do people like and admire about you? And I can't remember what it was, but let's say it was Pokemon and McDonald's. And so again, so we grab Pokemon. You like Pokemon and McDonald's, right? Yeah. Do you have friends who like to go to Pokemon or do Pokemon or go to McDonald's with you? Yeah. Yeah. Joey. Okay. So Joey, what does Joey like about you? Pokemon and McDonald's. Okay. I am good at Pokemon. I am a good friend who goes to McDonald's. I am so beginning to continue to work with them because it's not going to be instantaneous. I'm not necessarily, and that's why you do that family tool too. And for was it Sarah who had that mantra? I'm going to venture to guess when you ask, likely some of those things are going to come. I'm handsome. Okay, that works because we're going to build a skill here to get them better and stronger about being able to identify. And you will, as you do it, you'll change how you talk to them because you'll recognize they need to know what's important in our lives as a family. It's important to me that you do well in school. It's important to me that you get the help you need. We'll start changing that vocabulary, and vocabulary can change how we hear things. And then move on. Reflect back to them what you've heard. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard reflective listening. And we've talked a lot about that around dysregulation. Wow. Pardon me. You're really having a big feeling right now. I wonder what you're feeling. And then they tell you, or they, no, I'm not. Oh, it sounds like your big feelings are making you not want to talk to me. And you work through this whole piece, right? So reflecting back. And so that it helps them learn to express what they're thinking and how they're feeling. Checking yourself. If I heard you, I think you mean this. Now there's higher language here, but you can simplify that to what works for your child. Or wondering about things. I think you're saying this. It makes me wonder if you mean this, or if this would be true too. And Kayla, I love that. I'm getting him thinking to know he is loved and he has value, and people with value have a place. And, I used to talk a lot about inclusion and how important inclusion was. I talk about belonging now because we can all be included, but that doesn't automatically mean we belong. And we build spaces. But I also want to encourage you as family members, don't wait for a space of belonging to be offered or given to you or to your child. We build places where we let other children belong in our space. And we tend to hesitate. We wait for the birthday invitation and hope they're invited. Have the best birthday bash you can plan and make sure everybody's invited. I can remember the year I made that decision, and we had 4 kids under the age of 10, and we had 15 people, all girls sleepover. I thought I'd lost my mind. My husband really thought I lost my mind. But I wanted to create a sense of belonging and a space where all are welcome. And you saw that reflected in my one page. It stuck with me forever. And so really recognizing the difference, and you have power to create belonging for others in a space where your child's already welcome. So kind of flip the lens a little bit instead of waiting to be invited in or hope that they'll belong. My husband was not one that believed in, gaming systems and all that stuff, but we made sure we had a really nice basketball hoop and some outdoor, because outdoor stuff was important to us. And we invited every kid in the neighborhood, and I'd have Kool-Aid and sandwiches and everything, and kids knew they could come and play in our backyard because I wanted there to be space where automatically my kids were included. So we talked a little bit, and there's more to be said, and without hearing from each one of you. So I want to wrap up soon about kids who are non-speaking, who are shy, who may not share this on the first round. But adapt the process to fit your child's preferred mode of communication. Make sure that you work with your child's speech and language team and say, I'd really like to introduce these ideas. Could you help? I really want them to be able to express what people like about them. Could you help? I'd really like them to understand what's important to them. Could you help? Right? Use photos, try picture exchange images, have them draw their pictures like my friend Alicia does. Adapt the vocabulary in their speech device to include things like I am and I want and I don't want. And there's a direct correlation between I want and I don't want. I don't want dinner deserves more questions, because is it really that they don't want to eat, or is it they don't want that to eat, right? I don't want Jack. Does that mean they don't want anyone? But again, I don't want to be alone without friends. That means I want to be included or I want to belong, right? So there's a direct correlation between that. You can usually look at what's in the don't want conversation and get what is in the want conversation. You can turn it around. Let's see, where was I? Provide opportunities where people are able to tell your child what they like and admire about them. Do it as a family. Have an admiration jar for everybody in the family. And each night at dinner, have somebody put a piece of paper in it, in each jar. Before you go to bed, make sure you put something in the admiration jar. I really liked when you did this. I really liked when you did this. Use family-centered worksheet, the one that has, about my child, and ask lots of people or several people who know your child in different settings to complete that sheet and look for those common themes, those common ideas. Make sure you present that to your child for agreement. They said you're really a great artist. Well, first and foremost, and then they can go, no, I'm not a great artist. Well, tell me more. Why do you think you're not a great artist? And then you can talk about, everybody likes different art. I like Van Gogh. You like Disney and Mickey Mouse. They're both good art. We just like different things. So I think you are a great artist because they think you're a good artist. Again, conversation. Starting the life course, you remember in the very beginning, it's about that conversation, how we talk about this deeply. Okay. My favorite saying I put at the end of almost every presentation I do. And we tapped into it early on. While typically developing children have everyday experiences that get them ready for their future, children with disabilities have fewer chances to practice these skills. Families need to be intentional about planning for our children's future, including dreaming broadly about possibilities. When you start working with a person-centered description and you start talking about and thinking about what people like and admire about your child, you move out of that space of the fear of, will they have friends? Do they have friends? Do people notice how smart he is? Do they notice how kind he is? Do they notice? And you move into a space of believing and knowing at the core who your kid is, right? And that gives you permission to envision things. I can remember when my brother, I have a niece with Down syndrome, and I tell this story a lot. When he called to tell us she was born, there were two sentences that I remember distinctly. First one was, we have a girl. They think she might have Down syndrome. And the second, they weren't in order, more conversation. And then he said, I guess we're not paying for a wedding. We turn it off like that. We're afraid to dream. And I tell teachers who I talk to about person-centered planning and about these tools of having a vision. What do I want and what do I not want? And the power of just those two questions, because you're giving back permission to dream and you're giving back control of the dream. Because all of us look up and go, oh, all those things I thought about when this baby was in utero, they're off the table. And then we look to teachers and professionals to tell us when we can pull something off that table over there and put it back in the basket of possibility. And there's only one thing I can promise you. If it's not in the basket of possibility, it ain't going to happen. Put it in the basket of possibility. Always don't take it off. But look for those ways that you can introduce it in your future planning statement of your IEP. Those strengths, what's important, how to best support in that profile section of your IEP or any documentation within your country that requires legal expectation about planning. Take it to the conference. Take it to the opportunity for your child to introduce themselves in any setting. Have one for church. Have one for school. write them down. There's power in the pen, but then maybe it's something you work, just like that mantra that Sarah had, that it's something they know. And so that they can recite it and tell people about it. You can't go wrong with being person-centered at home, in your relationship with your family, and at school. So the last question I have is for people to humor me again. I know it's late, but somebody tell me how they think that this might be helpful this school year. Put in the chat one thing that you're going to do different because you gave me an hour of your time tonight. Because if you aren't going to do one thing different and you stayed here the whole hour, you've wasted your time. So one thing, and humor me, I would love it if I had at least 7 entries. One thing you're going to do different because you heard, or because I shared, or because you heard what Sarah said, or what Brianna said, or what Kayla said. Belinda said, I'm a grandmother to a beautiful grandson who happens to have RTS. I love that introduction. I think I'm making a one-pager for myself. This will help me focus on the best things. Belinda, I did that. My brother was in the hospital with COVID, and I did it and intentionally didn't know what I was going to do with it. And you're always supposed to know what you're going to do with it. And I didn't know. But when I read back over, it reminded me of why and how I should support his wife. Because when your brother's sick and he's got a whole nother family and he's that sick, it's really hard not to feel like you have input. And it just brought her to the center of saying, how do I support her? Because I knew his family was the most important thing to him. So immediately I switched gears and started supporting them. So I love that. Thank you so much, Belinda. Writing my nephew's transition plan. I love this. And it's perfect for transition. Perfect. And you can even do a vision. There's a vision tool that I can give you more information on. I'm going to make a different one-pager for each teacher, aide, therapist, and school nurse. That's big. I love it. I will ask more questions to my child. Vanessa, that's where we start. We start with the conversation. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm going to put a web page in here where you can get more information. For HIO. I think it's work. And this is a website. And if you go to the Charting the Life course tab or the video tab at frnohio.org, you'll see a bunch of videos about the one pager, about the vision tools, and some additional information about Charting the Life course. So if you thought tonight tapped into something that was important to you, go visit. And anybody from anywhere can sign up and do any of the trainings that we're offering. But you also can watch the videos at 1 o'clock at night when you can't sleep. There's 30-minute videos. There's 15-minute videos. There's videos about school. There's videos about work. But I really appreciate you sharing this time with me. I'm looking at the time. I'm going to assume no questions, or do people have questions? I would love it if you did. Yeah, go ahead, Kayla.
My son is almost 10. I recently asked him, I said, has anyone ever said to you that you have special needs? Or has anyone ever said to you Rubinstein-Tabby syndrome, or brought up any of these things? Because we haven't really ever talked to him about it. But our younger son, who's almost 6, is noticing differences, and they now go to the same school. And obviously he sees that his brother is not in gen ed. He's asked a few questions, but I haven't thought about pushing it with him because he's just Landon. That's just who he is. He doesn't see that any different. Is there a different way that I should be approaching that, or is that how we should continue for now?
Well, what I will share with you is there's no shoulds. I always gently say, don't should all over yourself. But I think the important thing is knowing you and knowing your family. I think there's different ways to look at it. I think having words, because as they get older, people are going to ask questions. And typically the way that question comes out is, what's wrong with you? Or what's wrong with him? And don't shy away from those questions. Be clear and think about them with intention ahead of time so that you're prepared. Because when those questions hit us, they hit us in a way that we don't always respond the best way we want to. But I think sometimes being just Landon I had the privilege of not knowing that my daughter had autism until she was in her 20s. And we just called it her stuff. We knew it was something different. And when we'd have something go really awry, I'd look up and go, "Oh, that was your stuff, wasn't it?" And she goes, "Yeah, that was my stuff." Because neither one of us knew when to expect it. But I think having words for it is important. And I think as your younger child comes up and asks more questions, it's going to be important for it to be a family conversation, because his questions and why he wants answers is going to be totally different than your son's. And I think that's where family counseling and that type of support comes into play a lot. But I think there's power in knowing who you are. My niece, Grace, who had Down syndrome, did a presentation to her class about what Down syndrome is and why it was like her superpower. It doesn't make things harder for, I mean, it doesn't mean anything other than it takes me longer to do things like that. So it gave her the words and it reinforced that. And she got to tell people what it was and inform them. So that's just several things that other families have done. Anybody else want to respond to that? Because you guys are as smart as me. Has anybody else handled that
Yeah,
situation?
we're kind of the opposite. Our RTS kid is 6 and our older son is neurotypical and he's 8. So we're kind of flip-flopped, but um he started noticing stuff around 4 or 5, like, oh, my friend is 3, he talks, why doesn't Michael talk? And I think he's kind of figured that out over the years. And a lot of his classmates will ask, like, oh, why does Michael have an iPad? Why doesn't Michael talk? And I think he's kind of learned his way of like, oh, he has Rubinson-Taybi syndrome. And it's kind of a way for him to advocate for his brother. And we never take offense to it, especially when a little kid asks. I mean, they're just curious. And I think it's always almost 99% of the time a good teaching moment. And he'll just say like, "Oh, that's how Michael talks with his iPad." And it's 99% of the time it's like, "Oh, okay, cool." And they've kind of learned something. So his brother kind of just advocates for him, and it's like little mini educational sessions. It's kind of nice to see. And
Yeah.
because we're
Yeah.
very, very open about it. Like if anybody asks, we'll talk and elaborate.
I just noticed that Lauren put the evaluation in the chat. Please share that. And I just appreciate your time, and those of you that asked questions and gave comments, because like I said, you guys are the smartest people in the room, and your experience speaks volumes for other families. So I appreciate all of you. I'm so glad you came. Come hang out with us again. Oh, I forgot to advance my slide and tell you when the next one was. There you go. Don't forget, we have a support group for young women with RTS. Starting at what age, Lauren? Remind me. I don't want to say that wrong. And go ahead. 20 what? 21. And this is a new process, and we'll look at possibilities as it grows. It's run by 2 women who are siblings of individuals with RTS. Both of them happen to have sisters, so that was where we started, because we had a resource that was excited about doing it. But if anybody knows, you can join anytime, and we usually get the word out. The next one's in October, and we'll continue with our next series in November around dentistry and doing the dentist. And we have the privilege of having a mom who happens to be a dental hygienist and is willing to share along with our developmental dentist. So very excited about that. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to give you your evening back, and thank you all so much for coming and giving me your time. I really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you. Lauren, we can catch up tomorrow if we want to go ahead and exit. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you so much to
Okay.
our interpreters who are able to join this
Yes.
evening.
Yes. Thank you very much. And thank you, Andy.
You're most welcome. Myra did an amazing job. Thank you, Myra. And yeah, we'll chat tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. All
Good
right. Great.
night.
Thanks. Good night.